So in this segment, we're going to be discussing Kemi Badenoch absolutely crumbling here in her attacks on trans women. This is honestly just wow. You know, the government have, you know, the Tories have manufactured this culture war. You know, the right wing have manufactured this culture war, but they don't know how to bring it into the mainstream, how to actually discuss these issues with people when it comes to actual legislative change. And this is honestly incredible to me.
That somebody can legally change their sex.
At the moment, the law says
whoever did this edit or green screen effect has absolutely done her dirty here.
A legal sex is changed with a gender recognition certificate, but legal sex is not biological sex. We are trying to emphasise that the Equality Act is talking about biological sex. It's what you were born as, your body part. You may change your legal sex at the moment with a certificate, and how that applies in different scenarios. There's a lot of confusion. There's confusion about the terminology. Even the conversation we're having shows that.
Isn't that your job to clear that up then? Shouldn't you be able to clear that up to people rather than just fumbling about and blinking erratically? She's got that Liz Truss erratic blink because she looks a bit nervous. Maybe it's a health thing. Maybe I shouldn't criticise it too much. But it looked incredibly off then, even the way she was explaining it, stumbling through words. And that's something kind of the newsagent's tweet mentions, that they've always thought Kemi Badenoch is straight talking. I don't think she is, to be honest with you. She's very condescending. And in that interview, she had no idea what she's talking about, so she struggled to condescend people there.
She doesn't understand. That clip has just revealed the Minister for Women and Equalities is coming on to announce a policy that she doesn't herself understand.
Or I think it's something slightly different, which is that what I think is brilliant about this exchange is that it basically punctures the entire tone and tenor of the critique that the Conservative Party has been making about these issues and attacking others for years now. Even today, the Conservative Party put out a tweet saying, we know what a woman is, Keir Starmer doesn't, or Labour doesn't. What that clip just showed there is that Kemi Badenoch herself could be said doesn't know what a woman is, or at least
she cannot define it in terms of how you identify yourself on your birth certificate.
Exactly, i.e.
And this is where they're trying to introduce legislation around this stuff, but she struggled to explain it. And so that tells me either the legislation isn't going to go as far as kind of the right wing want it to go, or it's going to be way messier than anyone can anticipate, because they don't know how to define these things into legal terms, because that's the key here. It's about how do you define yourself under a legal context. And so this is where they're struggling here to put that into legislation, and that's one of the problems they're running into. This is incredibly bad for someone who is meant to be one of the people who are pushing themselves into a leadership bid. You know, she's a person where it was hilarious, where she said, oh, well, I've got, you know, the ERG criticising me from the right and the Labour Party criticising for the left. Oh, I must be doing something right. No, you look incredibly stupid, just like you have here.
That as a result of the changes and the evolution that has been made within the legal regime, which fundamentally, as Badenoch demonstrated there, the Conservatives are not proposing to fundamentally alter, this entire bit of legislation and this entire bit of kind of like public thought has changed, has evolved, has become more complicated, and the Conservative Party is basically reaffirming that. So all of that, because as we've discussed on the show before, a bit like when Rishi Sunak, you know, said to Keir Starmer, even when Esther Jai, the mother of the murdered trans girl, Brianna Jai,
that's an unfortunate slip there,
was in the House of Commons saying, we know what a woman is, you don't. They have reduced this consistently to a cheap gag, a cheap joke, a cheap political point, whereas we all know all of the regime around this is more complicated, which Kemi Badenoch has demonstrated this morning.
That's a really good point there about how complicated the issue is. And obviously, like, it's very easy for the Conservative Party, and this is one of the problems they've run into, because they've had a stonking majority. They keep criticising other people for not resolving these issues, but then people turn around and say, aren't you the one in power? And they're like, oh yeah, that's right. And if you elect us again, we're going to make these changes that we keep talking about. But the problem is they won't make these changes because they're not as simple as they make out.
You just have to focus in on one thing. She says, yes, you can change your legal sex. That's fine. So you can change your birth certificate from being a male to a female. But she's not quite saying you can change your sex. And so therefore you might have a birth certificate which says you were a male, but you're now a female. But what happens if you get into trouble with the courts and you're going to prison?
If you are a trans person listening to that, you are none the wiser. You literally don't understand what the Conservative Party is trying to tell you about your very identity and your existence. And I think the wider point is that, and I'm going to be honest here, because I've always listened to Kemi Badenoch and thought, God, she is straight talking. You know, you may not like what she says, but she knows her mind.
The media love glazing Tories, honestly. It's kind of crazy to me. But point being is, like, the Tory party took massive digs at the SNP over this stuff when it came to the bill that I think Hamza Yusuf was trying to push in Holyrood, and ultimately the Westminster stopped it, and the one that Nicola Sturgeon was trying to push as well. And so when it comes to them actually answering the real questions here, they can't do it. You had the Women's and Inequalities Minister absolutely fumble. I think she has a couple of more titles in that one. Absolutely fumble this question to the point where you have absolutely no idea what she is talking about. And she made herself, once again, look silly. The idea that Badenoch is a straight shooter, I don't think she is. She's one of those people, she's condescending. That's where people, I think, kind of confuse being a straight shooter with condescension. But that's who she is, in my opinion, at least. But anyways, she had no idea. She might as well have gone on and said,
My source is that I made it the fuck up.
Because that's what she did. She had no idea what she was talking about. But anyways, I'm going to leave it there. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe. Support the channel on Patreon if you can. And hopefully I'll see you in the next one.